It's me, Brodie McLeod, and this is another one of my Wastecast vlogs. I don't get very many views, and it doesn't really matter to me. I just make these videos for kind of personal reference and something to do, really. Saw a really cool video the other day. Well, I mean, it wasn't like it was really cool, but it was really relevant and kind of made me think a lot about diversity and the recent protests that we've had in the UK and the way that people disagree on kind of doctrinated narratives, and it can really separate and divide people. And you know, I don't have a kind of particularly strong view on, you know, Islam as a faith or as a theocratic system. I don't really agree with lots of it. You know, I don't concur necessarily with, you know, Hebrew ideology either, like per se, but I think that both parties should and could and shall live in harmony together if they are able to, you know, embody and personify in a communitarian sense the spirit of diversity. And I'll show you the video that I saw, which kind of made me really think quite a lot, and then I'll show you what Gemini said, and that'll be this video, and you can watch it as many times as you like, even share it if you want. So I asked Gemini, I uploaded this video, I'll play it. I don't know what the audio is going to be like. It's no 2 minutes long. It's George Galloway outside a mosque, a synagogue in downtown Iran. So this was the video I put into, and I'll show you the prompt as well. Hopefully this will play without
George, can you tell us more about this monument?
This is the Haim Synagogue in downtown Tehran. It's more than 100 years old, and it's still active. Let me say that again. The Haim Synagogue in downtown Tehran. The largest community of Jewish people in this entire part of the world is here in Iran. They have members in the parliament, members in the government, honor, treasure. There's not even a guard on this synagogue, and there doesn't need to be, because the Iranian people honor, value, cherish the Jewish community that lives here and has lived here since ancient times. Jewish people at least will know of the house of Esther and Mordechai in the Iranian town of Hamadan, which is a place of pilgrimage for Jews all over the world. You didn't know any of this, did you? Because they don't want you to know about any of this. Iran is a priceless mosaic of many faiths, many peoples, many cultures, and of great and ancient history. It's also a country of 90 million people, and it's well able to handle its own security. So those who dream of making war on Iran should not do so, and nobody who watches this, at least, should support it.
Okay, so that was the video that I put into Gemini, and you know, he makes some pretty salient points. I was quite surprised. You know, the biggest population of Jewish people lives in one of the biggest theocracies, you know, aside from Qatar and the UAE, obviously. But you know, Iran is considered, if you asked a lot of people in Britain their opinion of Iran, they would say it's a kind of totalitarian, oppressive, Muslim kind of centric environment, and that's not the way it is, you know. And I think everyone's entitled to their opinion. You know, there's a difference between patriotism and nationalism, and I think that if, you know, there's no reason why those two things can't both work together, really. I asked, with reference to the content of the video attached, please provide a summary of the failures of multiculturalism in Britain, where there's a huge public dissonance regarding different diverse diaspora living in the same place, with mass protests and civil disobedience and multiple recent hate crimes committed by religious extremists, and compare the failures of the UK in attaining a peaceful diversity in its communities, with statistics with Iran, who, even though it operates under theocratic rule, which many consider to be oppressive and restrictive, has had less incidents in the last 12 months regarding internal extremism than the UK has. If diversity and multiculturalism can exist under a theocracy, it must surely be possible in a modern democracy like Great Britain. The pretext and the context of this is not necessarily going to fit a YouTube video. It's not designed to be a presentation, but it's based on the content of the video and the public information available regarding the UK and Iran. Here's a competitive analysis of the diversity and extremism experiences in both nations. So the video highlights the Hayyim Synagogue in Tehran, Iran, noting it's over 100 years old, still active, and that the Jewish community is the largest in that part of the world, with members in the parliament and government. The speaker emphasises the reverence the Iranian people hold for Jewish community and states there's no guard on the synagogue, suggesting a high degree of security and acceptance. This is juxtaposed with the situation in the UK, often regarded as a modern, diverse democracy. So here's a bit about Iran, diversity under theocratic rule. The video presents an image of a secure and ancient Jewish life in Iran. Search results confirm this. The Jewish community in Iran is one of the oldest in the diaspora, dating back almost 3,000 years. Historical sites like the House of Esther and Mordecai in Hamadan remain places of pilgrimage. Judaism is one of the three minority religions officially recognised by the Iranian constitution and has designated seat in the Iranian parliament. And the community is estimated to have between around 25,000 people there, with over 100 synagogues, and 30 of which are in Tehran. Despite the long history and constitutional status, the community operates within a restrictive theocratic state where Shia Islam is the official religion, and non-Muslims have faced varying degrees of social and political restriction historically. Videos claim that a lack of guards signifies complete security might be interpreted as a political statement, as other reports indicate ongoing international threats and a history of targeted state-based threats against Jewish communities in the UK linked to Iran-affiliated networks. But the secure, uninterrupted existence of a recognised Jewish community is a fact. So here's sort of the comparative detail of the UK. Multiculturalism, extremism and social dissonance. So the UK operates as a modern democracy with a commitment to multiculturalism and diversity. However, recent data highlights significant social failures related to extremism and hate-motivated civil unrest, particularly in the context of global conflict. So here are some of the failures of multiculturalism and social dissonance in the UK. There's been a massive surge in hate crimes. Statistics in England and Wales show concerning trends, especially following geopolitical events. So this year, up to March, there were 115,990 hate crimes. That's not even including the Met Police, so that's outside of London. There was a 6% increase in race hate crimes and 3% increase in religious hate crimes. And anti-Semitism for the period from the attacks in Israel on the 7th of October 23, there's been an alarming and unprecedented surge in anti-Jewish hate crimes in the UK, leading to the highest ever annual total recorded by the Community Security Trust. These incidents were heavily driven by discourse, regarding that Middle East conflict. The protests and counter-protests and civil disobedience following Middle East conflict have strained community relations and revealed a profound public dissonance among different diaspora groups. So the last 12 months, the UK's had Islamic extremism, which is the single biggest focus of counter-terrorism policing. 60% of those in prison for terrorism-connected offences are Islamic terrorists. But they're not doing that in Iran, and that's where most, they're really much more Muslim than us. Extreme right-wing terrorism as well, which is like the opposite end of the spectrum. This accounts for nearly a third of the terrorism-connected prison population, indicating a significant and active threat from domestic far-right groups. State-linked activity. The UK security services have reported a rise in counter-terrorism investigations involving hostile state actors, a number of Iran-backed plots thwarted since 2022, which have at times targeted British Jewish communities. So they're sort of doing it over here, but it doesn't happen in a theocratic state. And I'm not saying that's because it's better, obviously, to have... I'm not an advocate of theocracy in any way, shape or form. But the conclusion, the question posits whether the peaceful existence of a Jewish community in a theocracy like Iran suggests that a modern democracy like Great Britain's fundamentally failed in its quest for peaceful diversity. So normally don't read out these charts or tables, but so diversity status in Iran is constitutionally recognised ancient small minority. In the UK, multicultural democracy and modern diversity is described as being diverse, growing population with legal equality and protections. Internal extremism and dissonance. The video shows low internal security risk for Jewish community, no guards, and the focus is on security from the state and external state-linked threats in Iran. But in the UK, there's a high level of publicly manifested civil dissonance, mass protests, and a significant measurable surge in both anti-Semitic and Islamophobic hate crimes driven by global events. And terrorism threat, historically, targets of state actions, and current focus is on external threats to the UK linked to the state. So, there's a threat from Iran in their foreign policy, but domestically, they kind of do better than us. The terrorism threat in Iran is significant, active, and domestically rooted in threats from both Islamist and extreme right-wing terrorism in the UK, that is. So we've got both sides kind of posing a terrorist incident that needs to be policed and monitored and surveilled. So just to remind you, this column here is Iran. Tolerance is enforced, permitted by a highly centralised theocratic state that dictates the terms of existence. The governing principle in Iran is tolerance based on democratic principles. UK, obviously, tolerance is based on democratic principles and freedom of speech, assembly and religion, and non-discrimination. So the comparative data shows that the challenge is complex. The nature of tolerance in Iran, the Jewish community stability appears to be an example of state-sanctioned, controlled tolerance for a long-established ancient minority where the ultimate terms are set by the ruling theocracy. Nature of conflict. The UK's crisis of multiculturalism is less about a failure to legally recognise minorities and more about a failure to integrate diverse communities against external political and ideological conflict. The democratic freedoms of speech and protest that the UK guarantees allow deep-seated geopolitical conflicts and domestic extremism to manifest openly, often violently, as hate crimes and civil disorder. While the UK has seen a verifiable surge in internal extremism, and inter-community hate, a clear indicator of multicultural failure, Iran's apparent internal stability for its Jewish community comes at the cost of a severely restricted and political social environment. So they are living in not a democratic state with freedom of speech, but a very, just a really very strict environment, but they're still managing to do it better than us, and if that's the way it is, then I think that is like a wake-up call for everybody in this country to be like, look, we've got freedom of assembly, freedom of speech. It might be being restricted because so many people are taking to the streets of London to protest, but and that's just hard to police, to safely police and to sort of be vigilant to exclude extremist kind of narratives and actions. But like a price that's not measured in hate crime statistics. The freedom that allows British citizens to organise mass protests is the same freedom that allows extremist views to proliferate and manifest as hate crimes. A problem a restrictive theocracy like Iran doesn't face in the same way. I'm not I don't want to explore. Well, maybe we should. Let's just go for yes. We've only been going for 14 minutes. Let's see what it says if I say I'd like to explore it a bit more. So it's a fascinating comparison examining the historical paths of religious freedom in both the UK and Iran, and reveals that while the outcome, a stable minority presidents, may appear similar in the video's example, the processes and principles are fundamentally different, which directly explains the current differences in their experience with internal extremism. Here's a look at the historical movements in each country. So in the UK, a history of struggle for egalitarian religious freedom. The history of religious freedom in the UK is a long incremental movement away from mandatory official state religion, the Church of England, towards a comprehensive legal equality for all faiths. I'd rather just read the text and look at the charts because it's kind of boring to watch. I thought there'd be something a bit more texty, but never mind. Anyway, it's almost lunch now, and I haven't got much to do, so I hope everybody has a good weekend, and thanks for watching. Cheers.